The Monitor was built at the Continental Iron Works in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, New York. Construction was completed on Thursday, March the 6th, 1862. The Monitor crew received orders to proceed to Hampton Road in Virginia to assist the ships Minnesota, Cumberland, Roanoke, and Congress in blockading the harbor to prevent supplies being delivered to the Confederates. Lieutenant Green writes, "At 11 a.m. on Thursday, we started down the harbor. When we arrived at Governor's Island, we came alongside the steamer Seth Low, and it took us in tow. We went out past the Narrows with a light wind and very smooth water. On the following Tuesday, the wind freshened, and the sea was quite rough. In the afternoon, the sea was breaking over our decks. Water poured into the vessel. We had no fear as long as the engine could be kept going to pump out the water, but when the engine stopped, the water increased rapidly. The hand pump was tried but did not work good enough, and bailing the water out was tried without luck. Fortunately, the wind was offshore, so we hailed a tugboat and told him to steer directly for the shore in order to get in smooth water. Two Union ships, the Cumberland and the Congress, had managed to escape the guns of Fort Monroe and entered into the bay. The Confederate ship Merrimack was put in motion and entered the bay to attack the two Union ships. Lieutenant Green writes, "At 4 p.m. we heard heavy firing in the direction of Fortress Monroe. As we approached the bay, it increased. The pilot boat told us the Cumberland was sunk and the Congress was on fire. Our hearts were very full, and we vowed vengeance on the Merrimack." At 9 p.m. we anchored near the frigate Roanoke, the flagship. Captain Warden immediately went on board and received orders to proceed to Newport News and protect the Minnesota, which was aground. Arriving at the Minnesota in our cutter, I boarded the ship and asked Captain G.J. Van Brunt if we could render assistance. He replied no, and as I returned to the Monitor, the Congress blew up. At 3 a.m. we got underway and anchored in the channel. At daylight, we discovered the Merrimack at anchors under Sewell's Point. We immediately made every preparation for battle. At 8 a.m. on Sunday, the Merrimack got underway and started direct for the Minnesota and fired 2 guns. The captain passed the word to commence firing, thus beginning the great battle between the Monitor and the Merrimack. The shots flew about us in every direction, but did us no damage. At about 11:30, the captain sent for me. His face was perfectly black with powder and iron, and he was apparently perfectly blind. I asked him what was the matter. He said a shot struck the pilot house directly opposite his eyes and blinded him, and he thought the pilot house was damaged. He told me to take charge of the ship and use my own discretion. We loaded and fired as fast as we could. Once she tried to run us down with her iron prow, but did no damage whatever. Five times during the battle we touched each other, and each time I fired a gun at her, and I will vouch the 168 pounds penetrated her side. The Merrimack was retreating to Sewell's Point, and the Minnesota had accidentally struck us twice on the tower. We had strict orders to protect the Minnesota. Our pilot house was damaged, and we also had strict orders not to follow the Merrimack. We went to the Minnesota and remained by her until she was afloat. The fight was over, and we were victorious.